Welcome back to another episode of Tips, Tricks, and Takeaways. I am your host, John Butterworth, and we are continuing our series on Ableton. This week, we are looking at how to incorporate and integrate a Roland SPD-sx pad into your session. Though the Roland SPD-sx does have a brain, which means you can import and store sounds on it, in this scenario, we are only going to be using it as a MIDI device. So that being said, we will not need our master outs. What you can use and what we will be using are the trigger ins. That means you can have up to 4 external triggers, whether those be triggers you put on your drums or external pads, which you can use to trigger sounds. But the input and output that we'll be using, you can either use the MIDI out or a USB 3 out. Both ways for connecting your Roland pad to your computer, whether that be MIDI or USB, have pros and cons. The good thing about USB is it allows your pad to both send and receive signals from your computer, where with a MIDI cable, you need 2. You need an in and an out cable. The good thing about MIDI is you can run a cable farther. So it really depends on if your pad is close to your computer or if you need to run it a distance. If you are going to use a USB cable, all you have to do is go into Menu, go all the way down to Setup, click Enter, go down to Option, and make sure the USB mode is on Audio MIDI. If it's on Wave Manager, as soon as you plug it into your computer, it will go silent and it will allow you to import and export sounds that are on your pad. So you want that clicked to Audio/MIDI. If you're using a MIDI cable, you can just connect it. And the way you'll connect that is going from your Roland pad to your interface that you're using. And another thing you're going to want to do, which will make a little more sense when we get to Ableton, is you're going to want to go to your kit. And I recommend making a separate kit called Ableton for this. But we're going to go to Kit, hit Enter. You're going to want your pad channel to be on global, and we are going to assign MIDI notes to each pad. What you're going to do is you're going to name your top left corner 44, then 45, then 46, and then the next row is going to be 40, 41, 42. The next row is going to be 36, 37, 38. And then if you're using external triggers like I do, we are going to keep going right, and you have your trigger 1 is going to be 47. You can make trigger 2 a different one, but right now I'm using that one trigger is the same. So then that's trigger 2. Trigger 3, we're going to do 43. And trigger 4, we're going to do 39. One other thing to note, if you are using external triggers on your kit, you have to tell the Roland pad what triggers you're using so it knows what to pick up. So to set these triggers up, all you have to do is you go into Menu, to Setup, which my cursor is already there, go to Trigger In, which my cursor is already there, and then here you can tell your pad what you're using. So for trigger 1 and 2, like I said, I am only using one trigger at the moment, and it is the KD7, which is an external kick trigger. So I can go head and rim, which is just one trigger, or I can use 2 triggers. So right now I'm only using one. It's the KD7. And then if I go over to 3 and 4, I'm using 2 triggers. I'm triggering my kick and my snare. I'm using the RT10S. I'm actually using the newer version. And then for kick, I'm using the RT30K. Again, RT10K here. K stands for kick, S stands for snare. Okay, so now that we have our SPD-sx setup, we are going to go into our Ableton session. And this is the session we worked on last week, Miss Each Other by Danny G and Katie Mack. We're going to add a new MIDI channel. So that's going to be Shift-Command-T, and we'll drag that all the way down to the bottom. And we're going to call this, again, which is Command-R, we're going to call this SPD-sx. We're going to go up to our drop-down bar. We're going to go to Instruments. We're going to say Instrument Rack. Drag that to our SPD-sx, which is going to put this little guy right here. And then we're going to go up to Drum Rack and drop that into our instrument rack. So now that we have a drum rack, you will see all these different notes. What we'll do is we'll go to the SPD-sx. Our in is going to be the SPD-sx. You want to make sure that it is armed, record armed, or else it's not going to show up. And when you hit a pad, you will see it's working because there is sound coming there, registering there, and there's also registering up there, which means that a MIDI instrument is being played. The cool thing is if you look down here, all those different numbers I had you put in, they get highlighted when you hit that pad. So the bottom left pad is C1, middle bottom is C#1, then D1, middle left, E, F, F#, and then top left, G#, A1, A#1, and then I'm using these three as my triggers. So this is your kick trigger, snare trigger, and your external trigger. If you wanted to use 4 triggers, I would put another one in there. And that just kind of, for me, gives me my triggers and my pad. So then all you have to do is drag and drop when you put your different instruments in, which you can do one of two things. You can either go up to your samples up here and then just type in what you want. If you want a kick sample, for instance, you have all these different kick, and you can just take them and drag them in. And then you now have your sample that you can manipulate and turn your volume up and down, change the velocity versus volume, or another cool trick you can use. You can go into your drum tracks and pick out the sounds that the record uses and use those instead. So say you want that timbale sound. All you have to do is go in and make sure this is on your 32nd note subdivision so you can take the whole thing. You can take that whole sound file, and then if you do Command E, it chops it up and makes it one external sample. You can either go up to File and say Export Audio Video, or you can do Command Shift R, and that allows you to export that file. So I would call that Miss Each Other Timbale. And then I could take that, and I'll just save that to my desktop at the moment. And then I can go down to my SPD-sx. I can take that WAV file and drag it in, and now I have a WAV file that I can manipulate. I think I captured the bass drum in there, which I didn't mean to do. But so I can just take that out, which is kind of cool. Or say I do want that kick sound. I would take that and do the exact same thing. Shift-Command-R, export it, call it Miss Each Other Kick, and I can put that in either as a pad that I hit, or I can put that in one of my triggers, so every time I hit my kick drum, it will play that sound as well. I can do the same thing for the snare drum or any other sounds that we need. So that is how you set up a drum rack. Now, a cool thing is if you're doing a full Ableton session, you're going to want multiple drum racks so that when you go song to song, you have different drum racks pulled up instantly without you having to change it yourself. You can even do this in between sections of songs if you want different samples put in. And so all you have to do is you go to this little circle here. It pulls up this drum rack, and you can take that, rename it. We'll say Miss Each Other. I'm going to say duplicate, which is Command D, or you can do it with a right click. And say we just put in 5 of these. You can name them different things. And then all you have to do is go to chain. And these are all your kits. What you will do is you will take each one, and I like to do each kit as 3 values. That way, if I need to, I can move them around. And it's also more visible. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let's say 7, 8, 9, and so forth. So the way to make this automation change is you go back to your main session. You click A to automate. You go to your SPD-sx, the mixer. You say instrument rack. And then instead of device on the drop-down menu, you go to chain selector. We're going to make that a solid line by clicking on it. And then right now it's on kit 0, which is nothing. I like that as a kill switch. In case I don't want my SPD-sx pad on at all, I can just automate it to be 0. But right now we want it on kit 1. Take that and go edit value to 1. And now this kit is on the miss each other rack, which is 1. And you can see the little red dot, which means it's automating. So now anytime this automation lane is 1 to 3, it's going to be on kit 1. And then all you have to do is click it again. That's kit 1. If I want a new song, all you have to do here is go to your automation lane for the SPD-sx, click on edit value, and we just say kit 4. And when you get there, it will automatically change your kit to kit 2, which is value 4. And then all you have to do is, because I duplicated these kits, they'll all have the samples I dragged in, but just delete those, and then you have a fresh start. Put whatever samples in you want. If you have a different snare sound on the verse than you do the chorus, all you have to do is, if these are already laid out, say kit 2 is already another song, then all I have to do is go in here, push that down to say 2, make this my kit 3. I can go automate, and I can say, for my chorus, which is right here, I can say my chorus, let's say it ends here, and say that is kit 3. So for that section, it will go to kit 3, and then when it's done with that section, it'll go right back to kit 1. So that's a really cool way to kind of change your drum racks around. So things to remember: if you are using a USB cable to connect your SPD-sx to your computer, in the drop-down menu for the ins, you'll go to SPD-sx. If you are using a MIDI cable, you will use whatever your interface is called in the drop-down menu. You always want to use a instrument rack first and then a drum rack. That way you can switch between your kits and then go drag and drop the samples you want to put in. Make sure that the MIDI notes are correct in your SPD-sx routing chain so that when you hit each pad, it goes to the correct squares. And if it doesn't, then you might have a note in there wrong. Well, I hope this episode has been helpful to all you track and Ableton using drummers. Once again, this is just one of many ways you can use Ableton and MIDI pads. It's a system that I have found works for me, and I hope you've picked up a couple fun tricks when it comes to blurring the line between track-based music and using real instruments. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the comment box below. Send me a message or even send me an email. If you want to learn about these things in a little more in depth, I also offer in-person lessons and online lessons. Feel free to tune in next week. We will be looking at the world of IEC drivers, which is super cool and just another way to make this program and running tracks a little more seamless and less obvious. If you like what you saw today, feel free to share this video with your friends, send them my way, and we'll keep building this little community. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you all next time.